truth is truth. That's the beautiful thing about truth, is that it has nothing to do with opinion, nothing to do with desire, nothing to do with wishes or wishful thinking. It is what it is, and either you know it or you don't know it. And to know it is not to know it as idea or as psychological information or as concept. Truth is a living, breathing thing. It is the very essence of life itself. And the prerogative of every human being is to know themselves as being intrinsically inseparable from that truth. Truth is not something that anybody can teach you. It has nothing to do with religious institution, nothing to do with scientific institution, nothing to do with artistic institution, nothing to do with technological institution. In fact, it has nothing to do with institution at all, whatsoever. And yet all true religion, true science, true art, and true technology bow in submission and surrender to this eternal truth. And when the institutions turn institution and therefore become false, become means of power and control and dominance, they all split themselves away from the truth. Because truth is human. Truth is the prerogative of every human being to stand in direct perception of. And truth is awareness of your direct inseparability, your eternal inseparability from the source of creation, which is truth itself, which is love itself, the intelligence of love. Not the sick sentimentality, but the true source of creation, which is peace, which is ecstasy. And to know this is to exit suffering. To know this is to exit the matrix, as people say. 1:44 on the clock. To know this is to be totally and eternally free. Don't get lost in numbers now, because the true number is zero. Zero. That's the number that arises when you crunch the equation. Zero. Zero, zero, zero. Zero is infinity, infinity is zero. Done. You don't need anything else. You can stop counting. You can stop calculating. You can stop figuring. You can stop transacting. There's always physical transaction. You're breathing. That's transaction. You eat and then you excrete. Transaction. But in love, there's no transacting. In peace, in consciousness, in awareness, in truth, there's no transacting. There's no bargaining. There's no haggling. The answer is zero. You surrender to zero. You surrender to being nothing. Nothing. You dive completely into the void. Untethered, unbound, unchained, unfettered, no holds barred. And guess what? Then you realize the nature of the void, which is that which contains everything. It's alive. It's not blackness. It's not bleakness. It's not blankness. It's alive. And it's the birthright of every human being to know this. There's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to fear. This and the awareness of this alone is the way out of suffering. And this is antithetical. Knowing this is antithetical to our entire civilizational structure. It's what all true religion points toward, but which all orthodox and institutionalized and imperial religion desperately seeks to cover up and to avoid at all costs. It's what all true science points to, and yet the scientific institutions are frightened of it. And they themselves run from it, because it means no control. And the false institutions of art which we have today, which are merely machines of propaganda, also run from this and say, well, anything can be art, right? And then we stop seeing the true purpose of art, the true purpose of science, the true purpose of religion, which are all technologies of consciousness. And either they're being used for the well-being of all, or they're being used for destruction and warfare and division and separation, poisoning everything. As our religious institutions have poisoned our minds and our hearts and caused endless warfare, sufferings, violences, violations of all manner. And how the scientific institutions are used to poison with the technologies, to build bombs and blow people up, to poison the air, the soil, the water with the chemicals, poison the food. How the artistic institutions are used to create propaganda, cover things up, and generating most of the material out there, most books, most movies, most TV shows, most music, most podcasts, most YouTube channels, most of the media out there That means the stuff that's generated by people, so-called created, it's not created, but that's so-called generated by people, is a bunch of noise, just remixed noise. It's noise and noise and noise, and it's remixed all the time. It's the same shit remixed. And what is it? It's poison, and you know it. And so to come into the direct realization of truth itself in you, which is awareness of formlessness, timelessness, that which is beyond the mind, that which reveals the mind to never have been, that which reveals the psyche and all of its so-called parts to be illusions, that which reveals the true nature of thought and emotion, not as masters or as drivers, but as servants. That which puts desire in its proper place, reveals the nature of desire. That which shows you who you always have been, are, and always will be. That which reveals the eternality of your true nature, bringing an end to fear. That's your birthright to know. And when you know this, you stop consuming mindlessly and pointlessly. You see, there's absolutely no point whatsoever in consuming most of what we consume. It's just trash, it's garbage, meant to distract and frighten and scare. And most of it you only buy because you're afraid of not being liked, you're afraid of not fitting in, you're afraid of not getting the ends or meeting the goals that have been artificially conditioned into you as a part of the social fabric, as part of the civilizational structure, which keep us all trapped in this prison, in this hell, on this plantation. And then you're fed mythologies, or mythology is not the right word, because a true mythology is really an inward map, an inward instruction manual, a living multidimensional narrative that points you to that which is beyond the monodimensional structure of the conditioned psyche. But the whole social, the civilizational, we could call it mythos, the narrative that keeps it going, is built in the lie. It's founded in distortion. It's founded in violence. Our whole civilizational structure was born out of violence, is sustained in violence, and obviously then must come to its end in violence, not by the wish of any so-called outside agent, but by its own force of physics. When you build something so precariously out of violence, sustain it so precariously in violence, by violence, how else could it end? And when it falls, it's going to cause a tremendous amount of chaos and violence. Because people don't know themselves, they don't know who they really are. And the entire civilization in which we live in always, economically, academically, scientifically, religiously, philosophically, psychologically, socially, in terms of family structure, etc., ad infinitum. Every single institution that we have that is the pillar of our civilization is literally built on ignorance of self. Literally built on ignorance of self. And when you see what you really are, you see that this whole thing is a giant cardboard cutout. It's a cardboard cutout pretending to be something more. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. And when you see it for what it is, you see yourself for what you are. And you see everybody for what they are. And this is the only way out of suffering. Everything else just propagates the suffering. All the so-called remedies offered by our so-called civilization are just ways of further propagating the suffering. It's cruel and it's violent and it's unconscionable. And yet, when you're stuck in it, all you can do is continue making excuses for it because you're too afraid to pop out. You're too afraid to dip. You're too afraid to exit. Because exiting means exiting in here. Whatever happens physically. And you will come and go physically, obviously. But when you see that, one, you're free. You've always been free. Everybody is free. We just pretend we're not. Because if you actually see that you're free, it means you have to act. It means you have to act differently. It means that you can't carry on behaving the same way anymore. And that means you have to change the way you live. It means you have to change the way you eat. It means you have to change the way that you possibly dress. I mean, it means changing everything. It means an entire transformation in your way of relating to other people, your way of relating to yourself, your way of relating to life, your way of relating to nature. And it's not a small feat. because it means letting go of everything that you've known, everything that you've used to find comfort and security in. Because you see that what you actually don't want comfort and security, not psychologically. Physically, the body needs to be taken care of. It does need to be, outside of its comfort zone as well. But physically, the body must be taken care of. But psychological security, it doesn't exist. And that's why people cling to their paradigms. People cling to impoverished understanding of religion. Most people. They cling to impoverished understanding of science. Most people. They cling to impoverished understanding of psyche, of mind. Most people. They cling to impoverished understanding of everything. Because the real understanding, 1044, the impoverished understanding is easy to understand, or it's easy to believe you understand. And so with the impoverished understanding, it's easy to make believe. And people would rather make believe than stand in the face of reality, than stand in the face of truth. Because when there's make believe, you can numb yourself and go to sleep. And you need make believe to go to sleep. And again, when I say make believe, I mean the whole conditioned psychological structure of our civilization that we've been conditioned to call reality. And it's not reality. The whole thing is a cardboard cutout. And it has the appearance of depth. It has the appearance of strength. It has the appearance of rootedness. But it has no rootedness. It has no depth. It's being propped up by toothpicks and a straw and a paperclip. I mean, it's so flimsy. There's no real longevity to it. And what keeps it propped up is the illusion that it's meaningful and that it's real. The minute everybody sees that it's false, it has no more legs to stand on. So its very legs are imaginary. And yet we call it reality. And people are willing to kill one another in order to defend the illusion of the false reality. That shows you, and then they consider themselves to be sane and good people and good moraled and so on. But they're willing to kill for the sake of an illusion. But they're not willing to die. Everyone's willing to kill, no one's willing to die. You see? So if you actually want what you say you want, then you have to be willing to die for it. And as long as you're afraid of losing the body or of the body getting hurt, you won't. You just won't. And when you see through the cardboard nature of apparent reality, not only does that mean seeing through the artificed societal, civilizational, social structure, which is all made of thought, it's all built on thought, everything. Not only the physical infrastructure, all starts out as thought forms in the mind, made concrete with the hands, but the entire systemic movement, the software, not only is the hardware the product of thought, obviously, but the software that runs the system is also the product of thought. And obviously the hardware as it is goes with the system, goes with the software the way it is. And that's all thought. So not only is that all thought, but then all of the abstract awareness that we think we have, we don't see that abstraction means lie. Abstraction is not real. Abstraction means to talk away from. And so if you actually see that your understanding of death is purely abstract, your understanding of love is purely abstract, your understanding of life is purely abstract, you see that your understanding of life, love, and death are totally false. And if you're actually sincere as a human being who wants to know truth, who wants to know what you really are, beyond the conditioning, beyond what you've been told you are, you have to be willing to meet life, love, and death in truth, in actuality. Otherwise you don't know what it is. And part of the conditioning is, well, you can't know what love is, you can't know what life is, you can't know what death is. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can know what eternity is. You can know truth. Truth is not out there. Love, life, death, the source of creation, God, the universe, whatever you'd like to call it, is not out there, it's not back there, it's not up there, it's not down there, it's right here. It's right here. It's right here. And you have to travel no distance to get to it, to meet it, to come to it. And this is the gift of being human, is that you get to know formlessness in its entirety as well as form in its entirety. You get to know 100% divinity and 100% humanity simultaneously. That's the gift and the unique position of the human being. And you get to know it directly, not mediated through other people's words, other people's philosophies, other people's books, other people's traditions, or your book. They're not yours anyway. You were just born. And then people have all this knowledge. Here it is, and where does it get you? Nowhere. It just causes more suffering, violence, warfare, division, hatred, misunderstanding, ignorance, superstition, and on and on and on. And then people think they're somehow enlightened or wise, walking in such darkness. You have to have the willingness to find the light within, because you are a light. You are light. Truth is a great light. It is the light. It is the light out of which everything is made. Truth, love, life, these things are one. And you can know it directly. There's nothing that anybody needs to tell you, because you have everything right here. The only thing you can learn out here is technical skill. But when it comes to matters of truth, matters of consciousness, matters of being, you have to look in here, because it's not words. So if you're trying to understand what is through words, you're not going to get it. There's no way to get it. This is the most dangerous realization. When you realize that you have to find that consciousness, that truth, that everything that any scripture has ever spoken about, anything that any true mythology has ever pointed to, is all pointing to you. Every Buddha, every Christ, every Krishna, every Shiva, every prophet is all pointing to the truth of what you are, not through people's interpretations of the words, not through these scriptural institutions, which have all been twisted and distorted, maimed, all before even the prophets were even dead. If you go to any and every tradition, any and every one, when the teachers, when they were alive, when the prophets, when the seers, when they were alive, when the Buddhas and the Christs, when they were alive, people didn't even listen to what they had to say anyway. Everybody around them distorted what they had to say because they didn't understand. And it were always the people around them who didn't understand anyway, who ended up recording what they said after they died. And those are the same people that kept the institutions going for their own gain, for their own reason, which is why as soon as the prophets die, the people that claim to be of their group and of their family and of their fold end up turning around and acting in ways that the prophets and the teachers would never agree to and never co-sign. And then because they're dead, they can put all kinds of words in their mouth, and they can interpret things how they want to interpret things. And so being in living realization is frightening for everybody. Because when the realization is alive, nobody can corrupt it. No one can distort it. When it's alive, what can anybody do? No one can touch the living thing. It's untouchable. And it's always been here. It's never not been here. It's here right now. It'll always be. And the books are for people who are too fucking thick and stupid to get it. Too fucking thick and stupid to get it. Love, truth, consciousness is not hard to get. In fact, there's nothing to get. The cosmos itself is a living celebration of itself. When you see it, There's no possible way that you could go around wanting to hurt people, wanting to brutalize people. It's total sensitivity. Life is sensitivity. Evolution, growth is sensitivity. There's absolutely no way to get around that fact. You can't make it what it is. There's no philosophy. I'm not giving you a philosophy. I'm not giving you a teaching. I'm simply speaking the unseen. I am the tongue of the invisible. I'm simply articulating what it is you already know. Everything I say, you already know. I can't tell you anything you don't already know. I'm simply the voice from within, manifest in flesh, in human form, to speak what is always kept hidden in silence, which is ultimately unspeakable. And so, as a voice, I could speak for days and days. I could speak nonstop. I could talk about consciousness. I could talk about God. I could talk about love, life, truth. Forever. I could speak until the end of time and not get exhausted. Because there's no end to the speaking. There's no end to the unfolding. There's no end to what can be said about us, about it, about the nature of life and love and truth. You can't, and ultimately it can't be said, it can't be spoken. It is what is. Everything that is manifest is this, is that. You can't get away from it. So whether you realize it or not, you are that. And the direct realization of it is the stepping out of the jail cell, the stepping out of fear, which means no one can hold you captive to greed any longer. No one can hold you captive to lust. No one can hold you captive to fear. No one can hold you captive to ideas and concepts. No one can, as it's been said, pick your pocket and sell you back your own watch. You know, because you're not incomplete. You're not missing anything. You're not missing anything. You're not broken, no matter how you feel. Feeling is feeling. Feeling means sensitivity to what is. Thought always is broken. Thought is partial. Thought is incomplete. So when you identify with thought and emotion, you will feel broken. You will feel lost. You will feel hurt and suffer. And obviously, and there's a body. You're sensitive to your body, which means what? You feel pleasure, you feel pain. That's fine, it's all fine. But the moment you identify with it, you suffer. The moment you identify with it, you hurt. The moment you identify with it, you've given yourself an insoluble problem. You've given yourself a problem with no way out and no solution. The minute you identify with thought and emotion and the body, the minute you identify with form and with the physical at all, you create a problem from which there is no escape. The only way out is to cease identification, which means to cease identification with your story about yourself, to cease all identification. All identification. And when you do, and you hold everything at a distance, finally you come into the direct realization that what you are is all of this. And then you see through everything. You see the whole nature of thought. You see the nature of emotion. You see the nature of the mind. You see what it is. You see what it's not. You literally see what thought is. You see what space and time are. You see what consciousness is. And you know yourself as that directly. You know yourself as being intrinsically inseparable from God. And you see that the worst lie that has ever been perpetrated on humanity is the belief that you could ever be separate from God, that you could ever be separate from love, that you could ever be separate from peace, or from compassion, or from truth, or from the source of creation, and that you somehow have to earn love, you somehow have to earn peace, you have to earn compassion, you have to earn dignity, you have to earn sovereignty. That's how they keep us slaves. It's a fucking lie. Sovereignty, love, truth, joy, ecstasy, peace, compassion, these are our birthrights. And nobody has the right to keep you hostage from them. And you certainly don't have the right to keep anybody else hostage from them. Nobody on this earth has the right to exploit anybody else. And you certainly don't ever have to give yourself over to another for exploitation and abuse. But it's that very psychological system of exploitation and abuse that is the very bedrock and basis of our civilizational structure in all ways, in the family system, academically, scientifically, religiously, philosophically, psychologically, and it all gets dressed up as something else. All the institutions dress themselves up, the government, everything, the institutions all dress themselves up as, oh, we're here to help. We're here to help. And whether it's conscious or unconscious makes no difference. On some level it's unconscious, on some level it's conscious. But it really makes no difference how much any particular individual is aware of what it is they're doing. When you see it, you see it. And even if people have given themselves over blindly to be the puppets and the robots of the system of exploitation and abuse, it doesn't matter whether they know what they're doing or they don't know what they're doing. Seeing that they don't really know what they're doing, on the one hand, is part of compassion. But compassion then, in seeing that they don't really know what they're doing, doesn't mean that you go, oh, okay, well, they don't know, so I'll just let them keep doing it. You can't stop anybody doing what they're doing in their own world, but you can certainly withdraw yourself. You can pull yourself out and say, nope, you're not going to exploit me. You're not going to abuse me, and I'm not going to exploit and abuse anybody. Done. You have that power. You have that power. And then you have the power to reveal to people by you walking in your sovereignty and in your divinity. You show people, you teach people who they are. Not by, you don't have to shove a bunch of words down people's throats. If somebody wants to talk, then let's talk. But all you have to do is be it, live it, walk it. Share it in every way possible. And have grace, and it is grace. It's the realization of grace. And so you never try to shove it down anybody's throat. But you don't shy away from it either. You don't shy away from the truth and the reality of it. And you praise it, you give it... You know, you give the source, you give the soul, you give the true self, you give love, you give peace, compassion, you give the source of creation all glory and all thanks and all gratitude. Because of what it really is, not because of what people have claimed it to be so they could have power and control over other people. Because love is surrender of power and control. Not to someone who wants to have power and control over you, but to use people, when two people come together in love, they both surrender power and control to the other because neither wants to abuse or exploit. In love, when there's love, there's no desire. That means I don't want a thing from you. I want to give to you and I want to share with you. Love means sharing. Love means learning. Love means growth. Love means evolution. It means transformation. It means an ending of the old completely, because there's no fear. You see that everything that is reaches its apex in terms of its physical capacity, and then there's learning that's happening, and then the physical structure breaks down and is recycled. But the trajectory of learning, the expansion of learning, is infinite, it's eternal. But the physical manifestations reach their apex and break down, because that's a part of it. The physical can only go so far. It reaches its max, its breaking point, and then it crumbles, it's done. But the actual non-physical learning, the eternal learning, the eternal transformation is ever expanding. But so the physical has to grow, reach its apex, and then fall apart. Be recycled, grow, reach its apex, fall apart. Be recycled, grow, reach its apex, and fall apart. Be recycled, on and on and on. That's the nature of the physical manifestation of the cosmos. That's how physical reality works. But underlying it is an eternal, vast, open, clear learning. A love, a field that is totally indivisible from itself. And so there appears to be division with all the physical manifestation, but all the physical manifestation is appearing in the one field, and it's all an expression of the ever-expansive learning taking place within that field in physical form. But the thing is, in the one field, in the one consciousness, which you can call God, I call it God, or the universe, or the source of creation, or peace, or love, or grace, or truth, all these words mean the same thing when used in their true context and meaning. It's omniscient. That means it already It's already perfect, it's already complete. And so there's no time in it. The beginning and the end of time are already there, it's all right here, right now. And so insofar as the physical appears, it's playing out in a linear way. Even though there's multidimensionality within the scope of time and space, it's still a limited multidimensionality compared to the raw omnidimensionality of the formlessness, which is the source of creation, which is everywhere and nowhere all at once. Nowhere because it's nowhere in particular. You can't say it's here and not there. It's all there is. Everything that is made of it. So there's no avoiding it, there's no escaping it, there's nothing outside of it. It's impossible to be separate from it. And so all the mythologies about being eternally separated from God or from the source of creation in another realm or dimension, given whatever, ghastly name it's been given or ungodly name it's been given, is totally untrue. You can have the experience of being separate from that, but you can only have the experience of that. You can experience the feeling. You can have the psychological experience of being separate from love, of being separate from God, of being separate from the source of creation. You can have the experience, but that's an experience. The reality is that if the source of creation withdrew from anything, it would disappear. It couldn't exist. Everything that is in any dimension, conceivable or inconceivable, can only be because it is sustained by the source of creation. That's the meaning of omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. And the source of creation literally it's everything. There's nowhere and nothing that it's not. And you can know this directly for yourself. And you don't need anything outside of you to confirm it or validate it. In fact, there is nothing outside of you anyway. Everything is in you, and you are in everything. And you can see this and know this directly for yourself with absolute certainty. Because it is not a certainty of information. It's not a certainty of so-called measurable fact or data. And everything measurable, the word fact means that which is done, that which has been made. So the word fact means past, that which has been measured. And therefore whatever is measured is physical and therefore constantly transforming, shifting, evolving. But what is eternal is still. It's movementless. It's beyond movement because it hypersaturates everything. There's no room in it for there to be any movement. And yet despite being totally still, and untouched and untouchable and uncorrupt and uncorruptible and without beginning and without end, formless. It is totally dynamic and intelligent. It is love itself. It is peace itself. It is truth itself. And when you know it, it's like, it is the homecoming. It is the kingdom of God. It is what people call enlightenment. It is self-realization. Because there's nothing beyond this. There could never be anything beyond this. This is the all. This is everything. And it reveals that you were never broken. Never could be broken. The body can be broken. The mind is certainly broken, but you're not the body and the mind. And when that's clear, you're free. And you see you always were free. And no one could ever take that away from you. And this is what the world, just talk like this, I don't like speaking like this, but the institutional systems, the robotic institutional systems of the world have never wanted you to know this. And the minute you start to know this, whether you are in the so-called field of religion or science or philosophy or art, whenever anybody has got a glimpse of this, they've been branded as a heretic and they tried to kill them and silence them. Or they threw him in a monastery somewhere and told him to shut up, this is the history of the world. But it's our birthright, you see? And when you see that our entire civilization is violent, and then let me tell you something, what you see is this. Nature gives you everything for free. The whole purpose of a civilization is to come together in cooperation for survival so we can attain to higher achievements as human beings, which cannot happen without consciousness, without harmony. And what that means is this: the only purpose for civilization is to secure our survival. So any civilization that does not provide its citizens with housing, good, adequate housing for people to have space to be human beings, clean, organic food, fresh, organic food that's not made with damaged lands, pesticides, and all the rest of it, clean water, healthcare, education, a universal basic income, and access to utilities and amenities, including data and internet. Modern day, any civilization that does not provide this is not a civilization, it's a plantation. It's a plantation. We live in a plantation that has told us that you have to earn your right to be free, that you have to earn your right to sovereignty, that you have to earn your right to peace, that you have to earn your right to joy, that you have to earn your right to love, to compassion. When everything the society has tried to take and then sell back to us is ours by birthright. And birthright also means responsibility. We have a responsibility to be stewards of this land, of our bodies, and of the processes of life, and we have the intelligence to do so. But it takes actual consciousness. It takes awareness of your intrinsic divinity. It takes awareness of your full divinity and your full humanity. And when you see the nature of divinity and the nature of humanity, you see they're one. Humanity is divinity. Humanity and divinity are one. Man and God are one. Inseparable, always have been, always will be. And when you see this directly for yourself, it's incontrovertible. No one could ever take it away from you. No one could ever take it away from you. No matter what. No matter what. What would anybody do? If people hear this and they want to get angry and kill you, what does that say about them? What does it say about them? There's absolutely nothing that this message and this awareness can do but set everybody free. There's nothing it can do but set everybody free. You're right here with me. This message could never incite anybody to do terrible things to each other. On the contrary, the ones who would want to silence this, all the institutions and the people who are part of those institutions, who would like what's being said right now, not just through this vessel, but through all vessels that have ever become clear resonators for the eternal message of life, or the eternal transmission of the light of the source of creation. What's happened? They want to kill them. Why? Because the very awareness of your intrinsic freedom, of your inseparable union with the source of creation, threatens all exploitative and abusive social institutions, cultural and civilizational institutions. And the minute you realize this, you see exactly what they are, and guess what? It's all of them. There's no getting around it. And no one can, no one can pull the wool over your eyes anymore. It's done. It's done. So you become dangerous, not because you're actually dangerous. You're a floating beacon of light. You are love itself. You are peace. And anybody that comes to you can drink of and taste that peace, that nutrition, that nourishment that they've been missing and haven't even realized they've been missing, because they've gone so numb to it. The only way you could live in this civilization is to go numb. That's why alcohol and drugs are everywhere. And people pretend to have a war against them and to be against drugs. No, they're not. Without drugs, this world would fall to pieces. Without numbing agents, people wouldn't know what to do, because you only have two options. Sol or Novocaine, baby. You either numb yourself and go to sleep, or you wake up, and the minute you wake up, you see this is not right. It's not even, it's unconscionable. This is the meaning of what you call evil or wickedness. Do you know what the word evil means? We do funny things with these words. The word evil means, literally, it means mean-spirited. It means corrupt. It means violent. It means abusive. It means insidious, sinister. That's the meaning of the word. It doesn't mean somebody's particular philosophy of, as we would say, who's a good person and who's a bad person. The word itself means violence, exploitation, cruelty. Do you know what the word good means, actually? The word good, and you could look these etymologies up, and I encourage you to. Etymology is such an important science. It's such an important awareness. Always understand the language. Know the words that you speak. Know what you're saying and know what you mean when you speak. And be aware of how the words are also used, because most of our words have so many meanings, and the way that people use the words, most people use words unconsciously, or they use the words that they use the definitions of words that are either incomplete or that have been co-opted by various institutional forces. And so when you actually use words in their true meaning, people often don't understand you. And people like to get into, debates about, well, this word means this. Words have an etymological meaning, they have a prescriptive meaning, and they have a descriptive meaning. And language moves naturally from description to prescription to an etymological root, which is then used to create more more prescription. And so language is this cyclical dance. And then people forget, and then people say, well, language is really prescriptive. Well, it began as descriptive. But see, now we're going into linguistics. The point is, no etymology. So the word good means whole, literally. The word good means whole. That's the literal meaning of the word. The word evil or bad means corrupt. Do you know what the word corrupt means? To corrupt means to break into pieces. It means divisive, divisible, fragmented. So that which is good, literally, not somebody's idea, the little philosophical idea of I like it so it's good and I don't like it so it's bad. No, that's too silly. So when you hear the philosophers talking about going beyond good and evil, what they're talking about is going beyond the conventional understanding of those words in terms of conditioned philosophy and conditioned morality. The reality is the word good means that which is whole, complete, untainted, unbroken, not according to somebody's opinion or philosophy or idea, but actually. And as a human being, what you are is good. What you are is whole. What you are is complete, unbroken. That means without beginning or end, which means the sacred, the source of everything, which is love, peace, compassion. And I'm putting all this together because these words all mean the same thing. And so when you use all these different words, which we usually consider to be aspects or parts, and you put them all together and say they all mean the same thing, that can often help the light go on. It could help everything click. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying in the way that I'm saying it, so that everything can click for you. So I'm taking lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes worth of knowledge, awareness, and I'm packing it all together because it's all one. So I hope you're with me and I hope you're following me. And awareness is always right now. So good means that which is whole, complete, uncorrupted, unbroken, original. And bad or evil means that which is corrupt. The word corrupt means to break into pieces. So that which is fragmented, that which is fractured, that which is incomplete. So good, which is people's God is good, right? What does that mean? God is whole, and God means that which is whole, that which is complete, that which is pure, that which is uncorrupt. And so it's just saying good is good, or God is God, or whole is whole, or love is love, or peace is peace, or truth is truth, or love is truth, or love is peace, or truth is love, or love is compassion, or truth is compassion, or wisdom is love, or truth is wisdom, or peace is wisdom, or wisdom is love. It all means the same thing. It all means the same thing. There's no difference in the meaning of those words. And so then clearly you see they're self-standing. I mean, they're self-evident. And so if any particular religion or any particular philosophy or any particular culture or any particular tradition tries to tell you what that means according to their limited, narrow scope, you can laugh. You can just laugh. You can't ever be held bondage or captive to anybody's superstitious understanding of anything. Because as a human being who is fully human and fully divine, you have the right and the privilege and the responsibility to perceive directly for yourself what this means, what the source of creation means, what it is, your relationship with it, not mediated through anybody. And you don't need that. You can stand in raw perception of it, and when you do, you come into full human beingness, and you come into full divinity simultaneously. And this is what the world needs. It's consciousness. It's awareness of your relationship with everything. And when you know it, and you see there's nothing to fear. And there's nothing to fear. There's nothing and no one to hurt. Why? Everybody is you. Everybody is God. Whatever you do to yourself, you do to everybody. Whatever you wish for yourself, you wish for everybody. And whatever you wish and do to anybody or for everybody else, you wish and do to yourself. You can't say, for me I wish good, but for somebody else I wish evil, or I wish retribution, or whatever you wish for your neighbor, you're wishing for yourself. And whatever you're doing to yourself, you're doing to everybody else. And what you do to yourself, you're doing to God. And what you do to other people, you're doing to God. You're doing to everyone you say you love. You can't poison this and heal that. You either heal everything or you poison everything. There's no in between. You either forgive everything or you forgive nothing and no one. Everything has to go at once. You can't say, well, I'll do a little bit today and a little bit tomorrow. I'll forgive a little now and a little later. That's not real forgiveness. That's practice forgiveness. You can't say, I'll include some things in my love now. And so there's a lot of teachers who see people don't want to go the way, and so they'll say, well, every day try to include a little something more in your love. And that's a really sweet sentiment, and it's a really nice thing to say, and it could be a good practice for people who are just really struggling or really having a hard time. But the reality is, you have to include the whole cosmos at once. And when you do that, you see that's all. One, it's super simple, and it's all it takes. And that's what it means to be conscious. And when human beings do that, include the whole cosmos in themselves at once, then there's nothing for us to do literally but cooperate. Being in competition for survival is literally the stupidest fucking thing that anybody could ever do. Boom, did you hear that? It's literally the stupidest fucking thing that anybody could ever do. It's like, and then the people that are in the highest competition for survival consider themselves to be some of the smartest people. And it's like, you're the dumbest that's the epitome of stupidity. There's nothing more just asinine and than just ridiculously stupid than believing that the epitome of intelligence is being in competition for survival. That is not the epitome of intelligence. That's the sign of a rotten, atrophied brain and a rotten, atrophied heart. And we will be stunted eternally as a species until we go beyond that. If we actually want to achieve any kind of cosmic immortality as a species, or as if we actually want to expand in a meaningful way beyond our current limitations, then we have to come into the direct realization of our inseparable union with everything, which includes one another. And therefore, what I do to me, I do to you. And what I want for me, I want for you. And what I want for you, I want for me. And if you have division about that, or duplicity inwardly about that, and you think, for me, I want the best, and for them, I want shit, well, then you're going to get shit for yourself and the people around you too. And your whole life is going to have to be an artificial fighting and a keeping up of the walls to keep the shitstorm out. But if what you want and what you do for everybody is good, then guess what? You don't have to keep any walls up, because there's no point. There's no point. You only have to keep up walls when you're doing one thing in here and one thing out there. People put up walls to prevent themselves from facing the backlash of their own actions. But you don't see that if you're in a short-sighted place of, nope, here's me and here's mine, and out there is everything else, and it's so scary and frightening, and I didn't do it, I'm not responsible. But you are. You're a human being on this planet. You are responsible. You are responsible. You're a human being on this planet. You are responsible. Either you're responsible for everything, or you're responsible for nothing. And if you see you're responsible for nothing, that's a way in too, that's great. But if you actually see you're responsible for nothing, then you sit out and you don't bother or get in the way of the people who are trying to do something, actually. You see? And if you see you're responsible for everything, then you'll do everything you can to generate as much well-being for everybody that you possibly can. So the only sensible way to be here is either being responsible for everything or being responsible for nothing. And if you go all the way into it, they both mean the same thing. You'll do everything you can in all the right ways. But if you play the game of, well, for this half I'm responsible and that half I'm not responsible, By which I'm saying, when you think I'm responsible for this country and not that country, or I'm responsible for, and I'm not talking about stretching your physical capacity beyond its limit, right? Or not properly, dividing, but even then when you're in relationship, when both people are loving and actually responsible and in care and compassion and in consciousness, everybody does everything they can do. And then there isn't even a thought about, okay, let's divvy this up 50-50. If you have to sit down in a relationship and think about, okay, let's divvy this up 50-50, and that's the state of that relationship, somebody's unconscious. When you're conscious, you do everything you can. When you're conscious, you're aware, you're sensitive to the needs at hand. And then you do everything you can all the time without complaining. Only if you're conscious and you're with somebody who's unconscious, or you have two unconscious people together, all there is going to be is fighting and division and complaining, because if you're unconscious, all you can do is exploit and be exploited. Unconsciousness is being both a victim and a perpetrator at the same time. And all perpetrators are also victims, and all victims are also perpetrators. But if you just zoom in, and this is the problem, people put a very minor context on their life. They put a little tiny box around their situation, and then give themselves, and when you do that, only can you give yourself a fixed role. But if you actually look at yourself in the context of the entire cosmos, you're everything. You're all the roles. You're responsible for everything. That doesn't mean stretching your body too thin. It means inwardly you see that you have to consider everything as part of you. And so you can't sit here being antagonistic toward anybody because you consider them to be different than you. They're not. They're just not. Nobody is different than you. Superficially, maybe. One body is tall, one body is short, one is thin, one is fat, etc., 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 whatever. That's so superficial. Inwardly, in terms of what you really are, no one's different from you. We're all one. And if you live as if the opposite is true, or as if the contrary is true, you can only bring about suffering for you and everybody. However much you can flip the script and create the illusion that you're doing good things. Because the numbers on the spreadsheet are growing, and the customers are all saying, thank you for the product. It's slowly killing them. We live in a world where people will smile and say thank you as they're being poisoned and slowly chopped up and mutilated. And so just because people are smiling and going, yay, thank you, doesn't mean that what they're receiving is any good. So you have to have the sobriety to look at things as they actually are. And you can't do that as long as you have a vested interest. So it takes everything to surrender to truth. It takes everything to surrender to consciousness. Everything. It takes everything. It takes literally everything. Okay. I love you. I love you very, very much. And I know that if you're here, you're either awake or you're waking up. So hello, congratulations, peace be with you. I love you, and we're here. We're here, we're here, we're here. You know who you are, and you know what to do. Peace.